Hello, welcome to the UiPath Introductory Training. In this tutorial, you'll get to know the basics of automation and working with UiPath. Some elementary knowledge of programming concepts like variables, if-else decisions, and loops would be helpful, but even if this is your first time hearing about these notions, you should be fine, as we'll try to explain everything as we go. You've already learned about installing and opening UiPath in the previous training, so let's first get to know where everything is. When you first start UiPath, you will see this welcome screen, where you have the option to start a new project or open a recent one. We'll start with a blank project. We'll call it Intro. The interface is straightforward. Besides the conventional toolbar, there are three main areas that you'll work with. On the left side is the Activities panel. Activities are actions that we'll use to automate different applications, like clicking and typing, and other data processing actions. There are lots of activities, and you can find the right one by searching its name here. But more about that later. The big area in the middle is the Workflow Designer, and this is where you'll build your automation project. You can add activities here by dragging them from the left pane, or they can be automatically generated for you by the recorder. And here on the right is the Properties pane, where you can see and change different parameters and the settings of the selected activity. Each activity has a different set of properties, and later in the training, you'll get to know some of them. But first, let's see how UiPath works in a general sense. It uses two ways of organizing the actions that it performs, flowcharts and sequences. They control which action takes place and when. This is what a flowchart looks like. It works by executing each action, starting with the start node and following the arrows. Some special decision nodes can split the path it takes, in which case the execution will follow only one of them. They're easy to understand and follow, so they're suitable for more complex workflows and higher level organization. You'll get to create a flowchart in a minute, but let's also see its little sister, the sequence. As the name implies, it is a simple list of actions that we tell UiPath to take, one after the other. It's more appropriate for shorter, simpler workflows or pieces of automation that we can use in a larger project. Generally, when starting a new automation workflow, you will first drag a flowchart onto the main stage. One important aspect of flowcharts and sequences is that besides normal actions, you can have any number of flowcharts and sequences one inside the other. This helps with organizing your project. You can review the high-level organization of the workflow or dive in the nested flowcharts to see how it performs them. For example, let's say you're creating a workflow that reads incoming emails looking for attachments, and when it finds them, uploads them to a dedicated FTP server. It's a pretty complex project, so you'd break it into three parts. Let's say a sequence for reading email, a flowchart for finding emails with attachments, and another sequence for uploading the file to FTP. You could, of course, just as well do it with three sequences, or three flowcharts, or any other combination. It's a very good idea to name your sequences and flowcharts with appropriate names. We'll call this one Read Email, this one Find Attachments, and this one Upload to FTP. To make it into a functional workflow, we must connect the first sequence to the start node and also the rest of the actions in the order that we want them executed. As you can see, it's already starting to make sense. And we'll make a loop to repeat the process. Now, you'd go into each container and start adding specific actions, or even other flowcharts and sequences, but that's beyond the scope of this introductory tutorial. Because first, you need to know about variables. Even if you have no previous coding experience, you may already be familiar with variables as they're used in mathematics, to represent unknown fields or constants in an equation. For instance, in the equation y equals 5x plus a, each alphabetic letter is a variable that represents something that can have different values. When x changes, y changes too. Being a mathematical formula, those letters generally represent numbers. But UiPath and coding in general works with various types of data. Numbers, text, images, files, colors, and many others. So it's useful to think of variables like boxes that keep different types of data. The data in the box might change, but the box remains the same. In one box, you might hold an Excel table, and in another box, you might hold a counter for how many times a user has clicked something, and in another box, a text message to send to your customers. You get the idea. Here are the main types of variables, or boxes, in UiPath, each for a specific type of data. Integer is for storing whole numbers.